He lost his wife during childbirth, but one promise to his newborn daughters changed everything, far beyond what anyone ever imagined. The air in St. Bridget's Hospital was heavy with anticipation, the kind that clung to your skin and filled the sterile halls with an invisible tension. Samuel Carter paced the corridor, humming a lullaby under his breath, one he had once promised to sing to his firstborn. His mind raced with dreams of a future, building toy planes in his workshop, teaching a son how to carve wood, as he once learned from his father. In his right hand, he clutched a small blue cap, the one Eleanor had sewn herself when they found out they were expecting. When the doctor finally emerged, hat in hand and face drawn tight, Samuel's heart plummeted before a single word was spoken. "Mr. Carter, your wife, I'm sorry, but your daughters are alive." Daughters, not son. Two nurses appeared, each carrying a tiny bundle swaddled in pastel blankets. They placed the newborns into Samuel's trembling arms. As he stared down, two pairs of eyes blinked slowly at him, fragile and perfect. A sob broke from his chest before he could stop it. "Elena," he whispered, his tears soaking the soft cloth. "We promised to name him Daniel." He looked at the two precious faces, so small, so full of life, and made a silent vow, stronger than any oath he had ever sworn. "Sophia, Isabella, I will take care of you girls myself." Grief and wonder wrestled inside him, a battle he knew would never truly end. But there, in that sterile corridor smelling of bleach and sorrow, a father's promise was born. Without Eleanor, without any extended family, only the memory of his late mother, recently buried. Samuel gathered his daughters close and stepped into the cold night. Snow flurried around them like confetti at a parade no one wanted to celebrate. At home, the kitchen table was cluttered with unpaid bills and funeral brochures, cruel reminders that life had not paused for mourning. The hours blurred into a sleepless dawn. Sophia and Isabella cried hungrily, their tiny mouths searching for sustenance Samuel couldn't provide. Panicked, he discovered that the few tins of formula he had prepared were already empty. He bundled the twins beneath his coat, shielding them from the biting wind, and stumbled into town, praying for a miracle. That miracle came in the form of Mrs. Clara Thompson, the midwife who had delivered half the town's babies for decades. She took one look at Samuel hollow-eyed, desperate, clinging to two wailing infants, and pressed bottles of donated milk into his hands. "They are everybody's children now," she said, her voice firm but kind. Samuel could barely choke out his thanks, but the kindness embedded itself deep in his heart. It was a fragile ember, but enough to keep him moving. Back at the house, he rocked the girls through the long hours, humming the lullabies Eleanor once loved. The house felt emptier than ever. Every creaking floorboard, every flicker of the dying fireplace seemed to echo her absence. Yet Sophia and Isabella's soft breathing warmed the spaces she left behind. In the days that followed, Samuel learned by sheer necessity. He stitched makeshift diapers from torn bedsheets, boiled bottles in battered pots, and swaddled the girls with clumsy hands that became steadier with every attempt. Neighbors whispered over their fences, doubtful that a simple carpenter could raise two infants alone. Samuel ignored them, focusing instead on carving a mobile from scrap wood, a tiny constellation of stars, to hang above the girls' crib. When exhaustion blurred the edges of his vision and loneliness gnawed at his resolve, he would stand quietly by their crib, watching their tiny chests rise and fall. In those moments, when doubt threatened to swallow him whole, he would repeat the promise, "I will take care of you." At their first monthly checkup, Sophia and Isabella weighed in strong and healthy. Nurses cooed at their rosy cheeks and steady grip, marveling at the miracle unfolding before them. Even the townspeople, who had once whispered about his inevitable failure, began to fall silent. Yet loneliness lingered like a stubborn shadow. Each night, after tucking the twins into the old cradle he'd restored, Samuel would sit alone by the fire, whispering stories to them about their mother. He spoke of Elena's laugh, louder than church bells, her love for mango pie, the way she had danced barefoot in the rain the night they found out they were expecting. He prayed for strength, for wisdom, for the chance that someday Sophia and Isabella would understand the depths of the love and sacrifice woven into the very foundation of their lives. The legend of Samuel Carter, the carpenter who defied grief and gossip to raise his daughters alone, began quietly. Not with grand gestures or community awards, but in the quiet, steady rhythm of a father's love measured one sleepless night, one mended bottle, one hand-carved toy at a time. 3 months passed. Sophia discovered the miracle of her own thumb, while Isabella perfected the art of wailing whenever attention shifted away from her. Samuel juggled feedings and furniture commissions, carving headboards while rocking the cradle with a foot. One afternoon, exhausted beyond measure, Samuel collapsed in the sawdust of his workshop. When he opened his eyes, he found Mrs. Thompson wagging a finger at him. "You need help, man," she scolded. "Pride will bury you faster than grief." She organized a group of townswomen to rotate visits, bringing food, washing clothes, and sharing motherly wisdom Samuel could not afford to ignore. He resisted at first, embarrassed, but soon surrendered to their practical love. Every evening, Mrs. Thompson would arrive with fresh bottles and a word of encouragement, reminding him that Eleanor had once taught many of them to read. "Now," she said, "we repay her." Samuel, who had once believed himself alone in the world, found a fragile web of support forming around his little family. It was not a replacement for what he had lost, but it was enough. Enough to believe. Enough to keep the promise. The winter after Eleanor's death clung to Samuel Carter's home like an unwelcome guest. Snow piled against the window panes and cold draughts sneaked under the door. But inside, the small wood stove fought bravely, warming the modest living room where Sophia and Isabella slept side by side in their hand-restored cradle. Samuel, wrapped in a patched quilt, spent countless nights in a rocking chair, one foot nudging the cradle gently whenever a whimper broke the silence. The first few months tested every ounce of Samuel's resolve. Without Elena, life became a relentless series of trial and error. He learned how to sterilize bottles by boiling water in an old kettle he found in the attic, how to decipher the twins' creaser-sharp shriek meant hunger. A low whimper meant they needed changing. His rough carpenter's hands, used to sanding wood and hammering nails, grew gentler, mastering the delicate art of fastening tiny buttons and cradling fragile heads. The house bore witness to his clumsy devotion. Old bedsheets became makeshift diapers. A wooden chair was transformed into a feeding station with armrests padded by bath towels. Samuel even stitched a sling out of an old curtain, wearing it across his chest to free his hands while rocking one baby and bottle-feeding the other. The townspeople watched from a distance. Some whispered behind cracked doors, convinced that a carpenter without a wife had no business raising children. Others shook their heads at the sight of Samuel hauling 2 wiggling infants to the market, bartering handcrafted birdhouses for jars of baby food. But Samuel didn't care about the murmurs. His focus was singular: Sophia and Isabella. Mrs. Clara Thompson became his lifeline. True to her word, She appeared every evening with fresh bottles of donor milk, carefully labeled with dates and measurements. She taught Samuel small but vital lessons, showed to massage tiny bellies to ease colic, how to check the temperature of bathwater with the inside of his wrist, how to soothe teething pain with frozen cloths. "You're doing fine, Samuel," she would say, her voice firm. "You're learning the language of love." Despite the support, there were nights when the walls of the house seemed to close in, when the weight of exhaustion pressed so heavily on Samuel that he thought he might break. During those times, he would sit by the fireplace, cradling the girls and murmuring stories about Eleanor, how she had loved mango pie, how her laughter could outshine the sun, how she had once danced barefoot in the rain just because she could. He wanted his daughters to know their mother, even if only through the soft weave of memory. As winter thawed into a muddy spring, the challenges evolved. Sophia learned to roll over, and Isabella soon followed, setting off a new level of chaos. Samuel built a makeshift playpen from old crib slats and fishing net, creating a safe space in the living room. He crafted wooden rattles and stacking toys, each one sanded smooth and painted with vegetable dyes he brewed himself. One afternoon, while repairing a neighbor's broken cabinet, Samuel heard the unmistakable sound of laughter, pure, uninhibited giggles filling the room. Dropping his tools, he rushed inside to find Sophia and Isabella playing together, batting a worn cloth doll back and forth. It was the first time he'd heard them laugh, and the sound cracked something open inside him, flooding the room with a light he hadn't realized was missing. From then on, every small milestone became a victory parade. Sophia's first clumsy crawl across the kitchen floor, Isabella's triumphant first tooth, the babbled syllables that eventually formed into "Papa," each achievement fueled Samuel's determination. The community's whispers softened over time. When neighbors saw the twins' healthy, rosy cheeks and their bright, curious eyes, even the most cynical among them had to admit Samuel was doing something right. Still, loneliness clung to him. Late at night, after the girls had drifted to sleep, Samuel often found himself speaking aloud to Eleanor's portrait above the fireplace. "Am I enough for them?" he would ask the silent image. "Am I giving them what they need?" The picture, smiling forever in mid-laughter, offered no answers. Yet Samuel found comfort in those conversations, a sense that Elena's spirit lingered, listening, guiding him through the endless nights. The small house transformed into a living shrine of love and perseverance. Wooden mobiles dangled from the ceiling beams. Tiny shoes, carved from leftover scraps of maple and oak, lined the mantel. Every surface bore the evidence of a father's unwavering devotion. One Sunday afternoon, as Samuel pushed the twins' second-hand stroller through the marketplace, Pastor Samuel Green approached him. The old man clapped a hand on Samuel's shoulder and said, "You are walking proof, son, that God measures a man not by the riches he gathers, but by the love he gives." Samuel nodded, swallowing past the lump in his throat. "I'm just keeping a promise," he whispered. By the twins' first birthday, Samuel had crafted a pair of small rocking horses, complete with hand-stitched saddles and personalized nameplates. At a modest gathering, arranged by Mrs. Thompson and a few kind-hearted neighbors, Sophia and Isabella laughed and clapped their hands as they rode their new toys. It wasn't a grand party. There were no expensive gifts or elaborate cakes, but it was rich with something far more valuable: community, perseverance, and love. That evening, after the guests had left and the girls lay snuggled under their patchwork quilt, Samuel sat alone by the fire, carving a small wooden plaque. On it, he etched the words he lived by. "For you, my daughters, always." He hung the plaque above their crib, a silent sentinel to watch over them as they grew. And so, With rough hands and a heart stitched together by sorrow and hope, Samuel Carter continued to build a life-one cradle, one rattle, one whispered promise at a time. By the time Sophia and Isabella turned 5, Samuel Carter had woven their lives into a delicate tapestry of routine and resilience. His carpentry business, though modest, kept food on the table and second-hand shoes on growing feet. His hands, once calloused from building cradles and rattles, now crafted school desks and bookcases to meet the girls' educational needs. Their home, though small, was rich with laughter and the smell of sawdust. Still, the whispers persisted. "Children need a mother's hand," the elders said. "A man cannot raise daughters alone." The pressure grew heavier with each passing season. After Sunday services, well-meaning parishioners would suggest introductions to widows or spinsters, dropping hints as casually as coins into a collection plate. Samuel always smiled politely, but his heart remained closed, fortified by the memory of Eleanor and the vow he had made. Then, on a bright spring afternoon at the market, Samuel met Nadine Foster. Nadine was recently widowed, admired for her baking, and praised for her gentle demeanor. She was a familiar face, one Samuel had seen at church bazaars and harvest festivals. On that day, she admired the hand-carved stools he displayed at his stall, praising his craftsmanship with a warmth that felt genuine. Over the next few weeks, Nadine appeared often at the market, outside the girls' school, even dropping by with baskets of fresh bread. She praised Sophia's love of science and Isabella's tinkering with old radios. She spoke of family, of second chances, of the importance of a woman's touch. Samuel, weary from years of doing it all alone, felt his defenses begin to erode. Perhaps, he thought, the town was right. Perhaps the girls did need a mother figure. Perhaps he needed a partner not for love, but for survival. With little fanfare, they married under the wide arms of a mango tree. The choir sang familiar hymns, and the twins, in yellow dresses with sun-bright sashes, twirled and laughed, excited at the idea of gaining a Mama Nadine. For a time, the house blossomed. The smell of fresh bread replaced the scent of boiled potatoes. Bedtime stories were read by 2 voices. Samuel dared to believe that perhaps, after so much loss, fate was offering him a second chance at happiness. But happiness, he soon learned, was a fragile bloom. The change was subtle at first. Nadine grew impatient with Sophia's endless questions and Isabella's constant tinkering. Corrections turned sharp. Affection became conditional. Samuel told himself it was an adjustment period. Everyone needed time. Then came the humid Thursday that changed everything. Samuel returned late from a delivery, sweat soaking through his shirt, only to hear screaming from inside the house. Dropping his tools, he bolted through the door. There, towering over the twins, was Nadinea wooden spoon raised high, red welts already blooming on Sophia's tiny arms. "Bastard twins!" Nadine spat, her face twisted with rage. "You ruined my new dress with your filthy hands." Millie cowered behind Sophia, who stood defiantly, shielding her sister. Samuel saw red. Something primal surged within him. He stepped between Nadine and the girls, his voice low but trembling with controlled fury. "Touch them again," he said, "and you will answer to me and to God." Nadine's face contorted with disdain. "You think anyone else will want a man cursed with motherless girls?" She packed her belongings before dawn, slamming the gate behind her. Neighbors peeked from their curtains, whispering about the failed marriage, shaking their heads. Samuel didn't care. That morning, he knelt by his daughters' beds as they slept fitfully, still whimpering in their dreams. He placed a hand over each small chest and renewed his vow, ironclad now by betrayal and sorrow. "Never again," he whispered. "You are my everything." School resumed, and Nadine's memory faded like chalk drawings after rain. Samuel cooked uneven pancakes that the girls devoured with delight. He braided their hair with crooked parts and forgot picture day forms, but remembered to leave encouraging notes in their lunchboxes. When loneliness pricked him at night, he would sand planks until dawn, crafting bookshelves and toy chests, each piece financing spelling bee entries and class excursions. The townspeople shook their heads once more. "Who sells his heart for daughters?" they asked. "Sons carry a man's name." Samuel responded not with words, but with actions. More bookshelves, more laughter, more whispered bedtime stories about a mother who had once danced barefoot in the rain. In that defiance, Sophia and Isabella learned their first great lesson. Family is not defined by blood or tradition, but by those who choose you day after day, promise after promise, with hands steady enough to catch you when the world falls away. Samuel Carter, the carpenter with nothing but sawdust in his pockets and love stitched into every fiber of his being, chose his daughters. And they, in turn, would someday choose him back in ways he could not yet imagine. As Sophia and Isabella Carter grew into lively, curious girls, Samuel Carter felt his heart swell with pride and worry in equal measure. Their questions grew sharper, their dreams bigger. Sophia spoke endlessly of becoming a scientist who would discover how stars sing, while Isabella insisted she would build machines that could fix anything, even broken hearts. Their wonder was endless, but Samuel saw the looming shadow over their future. Education was not free, and dreams like timber came with a cost. Samuel's carpentry shop had weathered many storms. The smell of freshly cut wood and the rhythmic thud of hammer against nail had been constants in his life, but orders were unpredictable. Desks, chairs, and cabinets paid the bills but left little extra for school fees, uniforms, or textbooks. Each invoice that came in brought a sigh of relief, and each drought of orders tightened a knot of fear in his gut. Still, Samuel was determined. If he had to work twice as hard, sleep half as much, he would do it. For them. By the time the twins were ready for primary school, the expenses loomed like a mountain. Tuition, books, uniforms, all necessities in the city's better schools, where Samuel desperately wanted his daughters to enroll. He tightened his belt, took on night shifts, repairing broken furniture, and stretched every dollar as far as it would go. Yet it was not enough. One evening, as Samuel sorted through overdue bills at the kitchen table, a flyer caught his eye. New government regulations required carpentry shops to update facilities, install expensive safety features, and pay for costly permits or face closure. Samuel's hands trembled as he realized the fees would wipe out what little savings he had. Worse yet, compliance would mean months without income during renovations. He stared across the table at Sophia and Isabella, their heads bent over homework, tongues poking from the corners of their mouths in concentration. "Papa, look!" Isabella chirped, holding up a crayon drawing of a house with a crooked roof and a bright sun overhead. "This is our home." Samuel forced a smile, blinking away tears. He made a decision that night, one that sent shockwaves through the town. Samuel Carter put up a for sale sign in front of his carpentry shop. Neighbors gawked. Elders shook their heads. Gossip spread faster than wildfire. "Foolish man," they sneered. "Selling your only source of income for girls who will marry and leave you behind." Samuel ignored them all. Sophia and Isabella noticed the changes quickly. The shop that had been their playground, full of sawdust castles and scrapwood swords, grew quiet. Samuel spent long hours talking to city buyers, negotiating the best price he could, not for profit, but for the survival of a dream. 3 agonizing months later, he sealed the deal. The amount was enough to cover the twins' school fees for several years, with a modest allowance left for a humble living. On moving day, Samuel took his daughters to the shop one last time. He placed their small hands on the dusty walls, guiding them gently. "Thank it," he whispered. "This place fed us, sheltered us, and kept us going." Sophia pressed her forehead against the cool wood. Isabella hugged a beam. Samuel locked the door, his tears falling freely onto the iron padlock. They relocated to 2 cramped rooms behind the city's central library. The space was tiny, just a pair of narrow beds, a hot plate for cooking, and a single battered table. But it was close to Sophia and Isabella's new school. Samuel searched for work, but carpentry vacancies were rare, and most required expensive certifications he could not afford. One day, while sweeping the library floor, he noticed a flyer pinned to the staff board. "Library cleaner needed." The pay was modest, the hours dawn to noon, but it was steady work. Samuel applied, explaining his background to Mrs. Gloria Bennett, the head librarian. She studied his scarred hands for a long moment before nodding. "Anyone who respects wood," she said, "can respect books." The job saved them. Each morning, Samuel rose before the sun, sweeping marble corridors, polishing ancient oak tables, and oiling creaky hinges. The scent of paper and ink became his new forest. After school, Sophia and Isabella often joined him, settling at a corner table to finish homework. Librarians slipped them extra textbooks and warm smiles. In that place of quiet learning, the girls' dreams took root and stretched toward the light. They shared one bowl of rice at dinner, told riddles by candlelight, and studied late into the night. Samuel sewed patches onto school uniforms and mended broken soles with scraps of leather. He sacrificed comfort, pride, and even his beloved craft, but never once questioned whether it was worth it. When market women sneered at his haggling over bruised tomatoes, when taxi drivers joked that he should loan out the twins for bride price advances, Samuel bore it all in silence. Each insult, each slight, he stored away, not as fuel for bitterness, but as bricks to build something greater. And he reminded himself, with every aching joint and every sleepless night, that he was keeping a promise, the same vow he had made on the day he cradled 2 tiny bundles in his arms. One afternoon, while mopping the library's west wing, Samuel overheard a group of students discussing dreams of travel, ambition, and success. Sophia's voice rang out, clear and unwavering. "Our papa says dreams are like houses. You have to build them yourself, brick by brick, day by day." Samuel paused, the mop dripping forgotten water at his feet. A slow, humbled smile crept across his face. The world could mock him. Life could batter him. But his daughters were learning the most important lesson of all. Dreams are worth every sacrifice, especially when built on a foundation of love. Life behind the city's central library was a far cry from the familiar rhythms of Samuel Carter's old carpentry shop. Their 2 rented rooms, cramped and drafty, buzzed with the hum of nearby traffic and the occasional rattle of stray cats on the fire escape. Still, Samuel, Sophia, and Isabella made it a home, weaving joy through the narrow hallways with whispered stories, shared meals, and late-night study sessions by the dim light of a single bulb. Each morning, before sunrise, Samuel slipped quietly out the door, work boots tied with fraying laces, lunch pail in hand. He swept the marble corridors of the grand library, polished reading tables until they gleamed, and oiled creaky hinges that groaned under the weight of 1,000 hands. The scent of old paper and wax polish became his new companions. Though the work was grueling and the pay meager, Samuel held his head high. Every paycheck meant another month of school fees, another pair of shoes, another stack of textbooks. After school, Sophia and Isabella would rush through their assignments to join him. They tucked themselves into a quiet corner between the history and science sections, devouring books as if they were lifelines. Librarians, touched by their eagerness, occasionally slipped them extra volumes and smiled at the sight of the twins curled up among towering shelves. Evenings were filled with the simple rituals of survival, stretching a single bowl of jollof rice among 3 plates, patching uniforms at the kitchen table, and swapping riddles to distract from the gnawing hunger that often settled in their bellies. Despite the hardships, laughter was never in short supply. Sophia would tell fantastical stories of stars singing lullabies, while Isabella crafted wild inventions from discarded clock parts, claiming she would one day build a machine that could fix anything. Samuel marveled at their resilience. In their laughter, he heard Elena's spirit. In their determination, he felt his own battered heart beating stronger. Yet, the city was not kind to a single father, scraping by on the edges of society. At the market, women gossiped openly as Samuel haggled over bruised tomatoes. "Where is your wife?" they demanded, eyebrows arched in pity or scorn. Taxi drivers joked that he should loan out the twins for bride price advances. Some landlords turned him away outright, unwilling to rent to a man playing mother and father both. Each insult struck deep, but Samuel swallowed the hurt, storing the pain like timber for a fire he would one day burn, for warmth, not destruction. Sophia and Isabella noticed. They weren't blind to the way heads turned or voices dropped when they walked into shops. They heard the whispers, yet they chose not to let bitterness take root. Instead, they worked harder, studied longer, and clung tighter to the dream that had carried them this far. One weekend, their school announced a field trip to the regional airport. The fee, though small by most standards, was beyond Samuel's reach. He considered pawning his watch, the last gift from his father, but Sophia stopped him. "Papa, don't," she said, her voice steady. "We'll find another way." Instead, the twins entered an essay contest held by the library, writing about their dreams of flight and innovation. Their raw honesty and unwavering spirit caught the attention of Mrs. Gloria Bennett, who quietly sponsored their trip. When Sophia and Isabella stood on the tarmac that day, watching planes roar overhead, something ignited inside them. Sophia's heart beat in rhythm with the engines, while Isabella studied every moving part with the mind of an engineer. They returned home breathless, eyes sparkling. "Papa," Isabella declared, "we're going to touch the sky." Samuel hugged them both tightly, his throat too full for words. In that moment, he saw not just 2 little girls, but 2 bright, unstoppable forces rising against every hardship the world had hurled at them. From then on, every penny was saved with renewed urgency. Samuel took on extra shifts, cleaning office buildings after library hours. The twins volunteered at church bake sales, squirreling away coins into a battered biscuit tin labeled Sky Fund. Some nights, exhaustion wrapped itself around Samuel like a heavy cloak. He would collapse onto his mattress, still in his work clothes, joints aching, back protesting, but he refused to complain. Each ache was a reminder that he was still fighting. Meanwhile, Sophia devoured every book she could find on aviation, tracing flight paths on yellowed world maps salvaged from the library archives. Isabella took apart broken radios and reassembled them into bizarre contraptions that sometimes sparked and whirred to life. The city remained indifferent to their struggle. Inspectors arrived at the library, citing minor violations and docking Samuel's meager wages. Buses broke down, forcing the girls to walk miles in the rain. Textbook prices soared. New uniforms were needed every semester. But the Carters endured. One rainy evening, after a particularly grueling week, Samuel returned to find Sophia and Isabella sitting cross-legged on the floor, their heads bent over a hand-drawn blueprint. In shaky pencil lines, they had sketched out a plan for their future: college degrees, pilot licenses, engineering internships. Above the drawings, in bold letters, they had written, "For Papa, who gave us wings." Samuel sank to the floor beside them, overcome. They built their dreams brick by brick, fueled by sacrifice and stubborn hope. They laughed in the face of mockery. They studied by candlelight. They stitched joy into the ragged fabric of their lives, and Samuel, once a carpenter of wood, became a carpenter of future, crafting, shaping, and polishing two brilliant souls who would one day soar higher than he had ever dared dream. Opportunity often comes disguised in the most ordinary moments. For Sophia and Isabella Carter, it arrived in the form of a windswept field trip to the regional airport, a trip that would change everything. Thanks to Mrs. Gloria Bennett's quiet generosity, the twins joined their classmates one bright Saturday morning, their excitement barely contained. Dressed in patched jackets and second-hand sneakers, they clutched notepads, ready to absorb every detail. The airport buzzed with life. Engines roared overhead, and planes taxied across the tarmac like giant metal birds preparing for flight. Sophia's heart hammered in her chest as she watched a commercial jet ascend, disappearing into the blue. Beside her, Isabella scribbled furiously, sketching diagrams of wing flaps and engine cowlings. Samuel Carter stood behind the fence, his work boots coated in city dust, hands gripping the chain links. He watched his daughters with a quiet intensity, seeing their eyes light up in ways he hadn't witnessed before. Later that evening, over a modest dinner of rice and beans, Sophia and Isabella made their announcement. "Papa," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the tremor of excitement. "We want to fly." Isabella nodded, pushing her makeshift blueprints across the table. "And fix the machines that make it possible." Samuel leaned back, the weight of the moment settling over him like a heavy quilt. Dreams had never been small in the Carter household, but this was the sky itself. He smiled, weary but proud. Then, he said, "We will aim for the sky." From that night forward, their lives took on a new urgency. The Sky Fund tin their battered biscuit box became sacred. Every penny saved from bake sales, cleaning jobs, and odd tutoring gigs went into it. Samuel took on extra night shifts, scrubbing office floors until his back ached and his hands cracked from chemical cleaners. Despite their best efforts, the cost of higher education in aviation and engineering loomed like an impossible mountain. Tuition figures made Samuel's heart clench. The application fees alone were daunting, but giving up was never an option. Sophia poured herself into her studies, focusing on physics, mathematics, and anything that would edge her closer to the cockpit. Isabella tinkered endlessly, repairing broken radios, repurposing discarded laptops, and creating working models of propellers from soda cans and wire. The library became their sanctuary. Mrs. Bennett ordered extra materials through interlibrary loans, setting aside aviation manuals and engineering guides. Other librarians pitched in quietly, offering encouragement and late-night access to study rooms. Still, challenges piled up. There were days when the twins skipped meals to afford school supplies, nights when Samuel worked double shifts without rest, and weekends spent volunteering to earn extra credits or scholarships. During one of these grueling months, Sophia stumbled upon a scholarship competition requiring an essay titled Why my background fuels my dreams. She stayed up through countless nights, crafting and rewriting her story, a story of loss, perseverance, and the steadfast love of a father who traded his craft for a mop and a promise. Isabella entered an engineering design contest, submitting blueprints for adjustable winglets that could improve fuel efficiency on small aircraft. Her designs, scribbled on scavenged graph paper, were crude but ingenious. Weeks passed with no word. Then, on a stormy Thursday, 2 letters arrived. Samuel gathered the girls at the kitchen table, the Skyfund tin gleaming between them. His hands shook as he slit open the envelopes. The room filled with the crackle of unfolding dreams. Sophia had won the essay scholarship, covering half her tuition at Emerald Air Academy. Isabella's winglet design had earned her a research grant and a partial scholarship at TechFront University. They sat in stunned silence, the rain tapping against the windows like a drum roll. "Papa," Isabella whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "We're going to college." Samuel dropped his head into his hands, overwhelmed. Laughter and sobs tangled together in his throat. He reached across the table, pulling his daughters into a fierce embrace. "You've already flown higher than I ever dreamed," he whispered. The months that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. Samuel repaired old suitcases, patched together wardrobes from thrift stores, and borrowed a wheelbarrow to haul the twins' belongings across the sprawling campuses on move-in day. Other families arrived in shiny cars with polished luggage. Samuel, in his worn boots and second-hand coat, wheeled the most precious cargo of all 2 dreams, wrapped in resilience and stitched together by sacrifice. He stayed only long enough to help them settle into their dormitories. Before leaving, he knelt in the grass outside, uncaring of the stairs, and prayed over them, asking God to swap his strength for their success. As the elevator doors closed on Sophia and Isabella, Samuel watched their faces, bright, determined, unyielding, disappear from view. He stood there for a long moment, the echoes of their laughter still ringing in his ears. Walking home under the setting sun, Samuel allowed himself, for the first time in years, to exhale fully. The road ahead was still steep, and the burdens were many, but for once, hope felt closer than fear. His daughters were reaching for the sky, and because they dared to dream, Samuel Carter dared to believe. The years that followed tested the limits of Samuel Carter's endurance. With Sophia and Isabella now officially enrolled at Emerald Air Academy and TechFront University, the Skyfund tin was empty, and the financial demands mounted with brutal speed. Tuition fees, textbooks, lab equipment, transportation cost, each new expense gnawed at the fragile budget Samuel had so carefully patched together. The girls picked up part-time jobs at campus cafeterias and tutoring centers, but it was never enough. Samuel knew that if they were to stay afloat, he would have to dig deeper than he ever had before. He accepted a second cleaning job at a nearby office building, working from late evenings until the early morning hours. During the day, he still cleaned the library, moving slower now, every joint stiff with fatigue. Sleep became a luxury he could no longer afford. Meals grew simpler, often just boiled rice with a few wilted greens. His body ached, but his spirit refused to yield. Sophia and Isabella noticed the toll it took on him. They sent home leftover cafeteria food in thermos flasks, stitched new patches onto his work shirts, and pooled their tips to secretly pay for his bus fare. They never complained about their own struggles, the long commutes, the sleepless nights spent cramming for exams, the pangs of hunger that gnawed at them in quiet hours. One evening, after a grueling shift, scrubbing graffiti off the library stairwells, Samuel returned to his small rented room, only to collapse onto the floor. His heart hammered against his ribs like a fist. For a terrifying moment, he thought he might not get up again. But he did. Dragging himself to the old mattress by the wall, he whispered into the darkness, "One more day. Just give me one more day." He clung to the memories of Sophia's first step, Isabella's first word, and the sound of Elena's laughter under the mango tree. These memories were the fuel that kept his battered body moving, even when the city seemed to conspire against him. Meanwhile, Sophia and Isabella fought their own battles. Sophia struggled through grueling simulator sessions, balancing textbooks on her knees during packed bus rides. Isabella spent long nights in crowded computer labs, designing mechanical systems with borrowed software, often getting only a few hours of sleep before dragging herself to morning lectures. One night, disaster struck. Isabella's aging laptop crashed, wiping out a crucial assignment due the next morning. Replacement was out of the question. There was no money. Instead, she borrowed lab computers at odd hours, often getting scolded by security guards. Sophia, determined to help, stayed awake beside her, solving practice problems by flashlight so her sister could use their shared desk. Exhaustion became their constant companion. They stitched their dreams together with borrowed notebooks, salvaged textbooks, and whispered encouragements under flickering hallway lights. During a campus symposium, Sophia caught the attention of a visiting pilot by asking sharp, insightful questions about cockpit ergonomics. He offered her access to the Academy's flight simulators and promised mentorship. Meanwhile, Isabella won an engineering contest by designing adjustable winglets for small aircraft, a breakthrough that earned her a modest prize. The prize money went straight to tuition, barely enough to keep their dreams afloat. When they called Samuel with the news, he danced alone in the dimly lit library corridor, his mop held aloft like a trophy. "God hears persistent knocks," he whispered, tears streaking down his face. Yet hardship never strayed far. One rainy evening, Samuel slipped on wet marble at the library, spraining his back badly. The injury sidelined him for weeks, costing him precious wages. Unable to afford proper medical care, Samuel gritted his teeth against the pain and hid it from the girls. He couldn't bear the thought of them worrying when they already carried so much. Sophia and Isabella pulled together every cent they could, sacrificing meals and comfort to send extra money home. They even took odd jobs, walking dogs for wealthy professors and cleaning offices after class. Their determination mirrored his own. By the end of their first year, both girls ranked among the top 5 students in their cohorts. They earned places on the dean's list, accolades that brought a small but crucial scholarship extension. Slowly, the whispers on campus changed from pity to admiration. Samuel watched from afar, a silent sentinel. He never boasted about his daughters, but anyone who spoke to him for more than 5 minutes could see the pride shining from his eyes. Their lives became a symphony of silent sacrifices. The skipped meals, the sleepless nights, the mended clothes, the long, bone-weary days of labor. Each hardship was another plank in the bridge. Samuel was building a bridge carrying Sophia and Isabella toward a future he could barely allow himself to imagine. Late one evening, after returning from a double shift, Samuel found a note tucked under his pillow. In Sophia's careful handwriting it read, "Papa, you taught us that real builders work in silence. Thank you for building our wings. We promise to fly high for you." He sat there for a long time, the note trembling in his hands, the tears coming faster than he could stop them. Outside, the city buzzed and blared, indifferent to the quiet miracles unfolding in the Carter household. But inside those walls, 3 hearts beat together, weathered, weary, but undefeated. And though no one else could see it yet, Samuel Carter knew the truth. Their dreams were no longer just dreams. They were taking flight. The second year of college arrived like a fresh wind, carrying with it new opportunities and heavier challenges. Yet amidst the endless classes, late-night study sessions, and part-time jobs, glimmers of triumph began to break through for Sophia and Isabella Carter. At Emerald Air Academy, Sophia's diligence caught the eye of Captain Walter Green, a retired commercial pilot who volunteered as a mentor for promising students. During a practical flight simulation session, Sophia navigated a complex emergency landing with precision and calmer feet that impressed not just Captain Green, but the entire instructor panel. "You have the instincts of a seasoned pilot," Captain Green told her, handing over a letter of recommendation for an elite internship with Skyway Airlines. "Don't waste them." Sophia clutched the letter as if it were a boarding pass to her dreams. Meanwhile, at TechFront University, Isabella's knack for innovation blossomed. For her mechanical engineering capstone project, she proposed a lightweight, modular avionics bracket designed to reduce maintenance time and improve aircraft efficiency. Skeptics initially dismissed her ideas. She was, after all, just a second-year student. But Isabella had grown up watching her father carve miracles from wood and scarcity. She knew how to build resilience into every design. After presenting her prototype at a regional engineering competition, Isabella shocked everyone by winning first place. Aerotech Manufacturing, a respected name in aviation technology, offered her a summer internship on the spot. The prize money and stipend from both internships lifted a heavy burden from the Carter family. With it, Sophia and Isabella could afford their textbooks for the next year, cover part of their living expenses, and perhaps, most importantly, send a little money back to Samuel. When they called to tell him the news, Samuel Carter leaned against the library's marble pillar, clutching his phone with trembling hands. He listened to their laughter, their breathless excitement, and felt an unfamiliar sensation rising in his chest. Something lighter than pride, something deeper than relief. Hope. Pure, undiluted hope. For the first time in years, Samuel allowed himself a small celebration. He bought a cup of real coffee, not the instant powder he usually rationed, and raised it in a silent toast to Sophia, Isabella, and the invisible bridge they had crossed together. But even as doors opened, life continued to test them. Sophia's internship meant grueling simulator hours and written exams that demanded everything she had. Often, she slept on benches in the academy's lounge, waking stiff and cold, but determined. She kept Captain Green's letter tucked in her flight manual as a reminder that someone believed in her. Isabella's work at Aerotech was no easier. She faced skeptical supervisors and grueling deadlines, but each successful project earned her growing respect. Her design for a smart diagnostics modular AI system capable of predicting equipment failure before it happened earned the attention of the company's research division. Back home, Samuel continued to work 2 jobs, refusing to let up. Every dollar he earned, every floor he scrubbed, every table he polished, was an investment into the soaring futures of his daughters. During a rare Sunday off, Samuel attended a small neighborhood gathering where former skeptics, seeing the Carter girls' rising success, now offered awkward congratulations. "You did good, Samuel," one neighbor said, clapping him on the back. "Those girls of yours, they're going places." Samuel smiled, weathered and humble. He said little, but inside, a quiet storm of gratitude brewed. By the end of summer, Sophia and Isabella returned home for a brief break before the new semester. They found Samuel's small apartment freshly swept, a pot of stew simmering on the stove, and a bouquet of hand-carved wooden flowers on the table. They brought gifts of their own. Sophia, a framed photo of herself in her flight uniform, and Isabella, a replica of her avionics bracket, engraved with the words, "For Papa, our first engineer." Samuel could barely hold back his tears as he accepted them. Over dinner, they spoke of plans: Sophia's goal to log her first real flight hours by year's end, Isabella's proposal to patent her diagnostics module, and the dreams that had once seemed so distant now drawing closer by the day. The conversation stretched into the night, filled with laughter, memories, and hopeful speculation. As Samuel watched his daughters animatedly debating aerodynamics versus propulsion systems, he thought of Elenath, promises they had made in whispered moments, the dreams they had dared to dream beneath the wide mango tree. They were keeping those promises now. That night, Samuel wrote in his worn journal, "They are flying, Elena, higher than I ever dared imagine." Sophia and Isabella's successes were not overnight miracles. They were built on 1,000 quiet sacrifices, on mended uniforms, on library floors scrubbed until they shone, on missed meals and endless prayers. The steps they were taking, now the internships, the accolades, the growing recognition, were the first solid stones laid in a bridge that would carry them toward a future Samuel had always believed was possible. Not through luck, but through faith, love, and the relentless, patient labor of dreams crafted one day, one sacrifice at a time. The Carter family was no longer just surviving, they were rising. Graduation day dawned bright and clear, as if the heavens themselves had chosen to bless the occasion. The campus lawns, once a distant dream for Samuel Carter, were now a sea of navy blue gowns and fluttering tassels. Proud parents clustered together, clutching cameras and floral bouquets, faces glowing with anticipation. Samuel arrived early, wearing his Bestan old Sunday suit carefully pressed the night before, and a tie Sophia had bought him from her first paycheck. The tie was slightly crooked, but he wore it like a medal of honor. In his calloused hands, he clutched a battered second-hand camera he had taught himself to use through late-night YouTube tutorials. He was determined to capture every moment, every smile, every T-retched forever, not just in memory, but in pictures he could hold. The procession began. Names echoed through the loudspeakers, followed by bursts of applause, when they announced Sophia Carter, Bachelor of Science in Aviation. Samuel couldn't contain himself. "That's my pilot," he shouted, his voice ringing out clear and proud. The crowd chuckled warmly, and Sophia, cheeks flushed, spotted her father and waved her cap in the air, her smile brighter than the midday sun. Moments later, Isabella Carter, Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, specializing in avionics. Isabella crossed the stage, her tassels swinging with each confident step. She blew a kiss towards Samuel, who tried to snap a photo but found his hands trembling too much to focus. A kind stranger nearby gently took the camera from him and captured the moment. After the ceremony, amidst the joyful chaos of graduates and families reuniting, Sophia and Isabella pulled Samuel toward a special exhibit on the campus tarmac. Parked there, gleaming under the sun, was a training jet provided by Skyway Airlines for demonstrations. Sophia, now an official first officer trainee, was allowed to invite family aboard. She grabbed her father's hand and led him up the narrow steps into the cockpit. Samuel's breath caught in his throat as he touched the controls, the same controls his daughter would soon command thousands of feet above the earth. "Papa," Sophia said, her voice thick with emotion, "I used to dream of this when you built me toy planes from scraps. Your hands built this future too." Isabella joined them, cradling a small package. Inside was a miniature wooden airplane, carved from the leftover mahogany Samuel had once let her practice on as a child. "For your new desk at Artisan Gallery," Isabella said, smiling. Samuel held the delicate plane as if it were a sacred relic, tracing the grain with trembling fingers. "It's perfect," he whispered. Before they could leave, reporters from a local news station covering the story of the twin sisters of the sky cornered them for interviews. Samuel, uncomfortable with the attention, tried to step aside, but the reporter insisted, "Mr. Carter, what kept you going all these years?" Samuel looked at his daughters, standing tall in their caps and gowns, their futures unfolding like wings behind them. "A promise to their mother," he said simply. The clip aired that night and quickly went viral. Across the country, viewers were moved by the story of the humble father who sacrificed everything for his daughter's dreams. Donations poured into a scholarship fund the twins established, Christiana's Promise, named in honor of the mother they never knew, but whose spirit had guided their journey. Later that evening, instead of attending the lavish hotel banquets many graduates opted for, Samuel, Sophia, and Isabella found a quiet roadside stall. They ate fried plantains and spicy jollof rice under the stars, their laughter mingling with the distant hum of traffic. Between bites, they mapped out their next steps. Sophia would begin her simulator sessions with Skyway Airlines, and Isabella would start her engineering residency at Aerotech. Meanwhile, Samuel would take up a consulting role at Artisan Gallery, designing bespoke furniture for luxury hotels, a job that paid triple his old cleaning salary. 3 paths, 1 heartbeat. As they finished their modest feast, Samuel leaned back in his chair, staring at the stars. Once, he had studied those same stars from a leaking roof, wondering if hope was just another word for foolishness. Now, under a different sky, with his daughters beside him, he knew the truth. Hope was real. Hope had wings. The city lights flickered around them, but for Samuel Carter, no light shone brighter than the 2 stars he had nurtured with tired hands and an unbreakable heart. He raised his glass of malt soda in a toast. "To promises kept," he said. Sophia and Isabella clinked their glasses against his, their eyes shining with gratitude, pride, and something more, a fierce, unstoppable love that would carry them through every sky they dared to conquer. With stability finally within reach, the Carters' hearts turned naturally outward, seeking ways to give back to the community that had once cradled their dreams during the most fragile of times. Sophia and Isabella, now thriving in their respective careers, knew exactly where they wanted to start. Their small rural hometown, the place where neighbors once whispered that Samuel Carter was a fool for sacrificing everything for daughters, still struggled with limited access to education and health care. "We have to build something," Sophia said one evening, sketching ideas on a diner napkin as they shared a late meal with Samuel. "Something lasting. Something that can outlive us," Isabella added, tapping her pen thoughtfully. Samuel listened quietly, his heart swelling with pride. He had planted seeds long ago. Now he was watching them bloom into a garden larger than he had ever dared imagine. Together, they pitched a bold proposal to the municipal council, a combined primary school and health clinic built right in the heart of their hometown. The idea was simple, but powerful. Create a place where children could learn and families could access basic medical care without traveling miles into the city. Funding would come from a combination of Sophia and Isabella's salaries, Samuel's profits from his new bespoke furniture designs, and donations sparked by the viral attention their graduation story had received. The council, initially skeptical, finally agreed, especially after seeing how the twins had turned every doubt ever cast upon them into stepping stones toward success. Construction began almost immediately. Samuel oversaw much of the site work himself. his carpenter's hands once again shaping futures from raw materials. He designed wide desks to accommodate left-handed students, a detail often overlooked but deeply important, and sturdy bookshelves for the classrooms. He carved benches from reclaimed wood, each one polished to a warm glow. Sophia spent her weekends teaching aviation workshops, letting children craft paper airplanes and dream beyond the borders of their small town. Isabella installed solar panels on the school roof and taught simple science lessons about renewable energy, planting the seeds of curiosity that would hopefully grow into careers of their own. After months of sweat, setbacks, and steadfast determination, opening day arrived. The building brightly painted and alive with the scent of fresh lumber and new beginnings bore a simple but powerful name: Christiana Memorial School and Health Center. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew a crowd larger than anyone had anticipated. Choirs sang songs of hope. Elders wiped away tears. Children laughed and chased each other around the new playground. Skyway Airlines, now proudly employing Sophia, even arranged a surprise flyover in her honor. As the plane roared overhead, tiny hands pointed skyward and the cheers echoed across the fields. Samuel stood quietly at the back of the gathering, his cap held against his chest. Tears blurred his vision as he watched Sophia and Isabella, now pillars of their community, shaking hands, laughing, and dedicating the fruits of their labor to the future. When it was his turn to speak, Samuel stepped up to the makeshift podium. His voice was low but steady. "Once, people said investing in girls was a waste," he began. "Today, these girls are investing in everyone." Applause thundered through the crowd, not polite or obligatory, but fierce and heartfelt. After the speeches, the twins presented honorary plaques to the early helpers who had once lent a hand when it mattered most: Mrs. Clara Thompson, who had given Samuel the first bottles of donor milk; Mrs. Gloria Bennett, who had kept the library doors open late, and several others whose quiet kindness had built invisible bridges. Humility remained the cornerstone of their success. "This isn't just our victory," Isabella said, her voice trembling. "It belongs to every person who believed when it would have been easier not to." Within months, the impact of the new facility was undeniable. Clinic nurses reported dramatic drops in preventable diseases. School enrollment, especially among young girls, more than doubled. Families who once saw education as an impossible luxury now watched their children march proudly through the school gates each morning. Sophia and Isabella made frequent visits, balancing their growing careers with their deep-rooted commitment to the place that had raised them. They organized science fairs, health workshops, and mentorship programs, planting seeds of hope with every handshake and every lesson. One afternoon, as Sophia helped a group of students fold elaborate paper airplanes, a little girl named Amina tugged at her sleeve. "Miss Carter," she said shyly, "one day I'm going to be a pilot like you." Sophia knelt down so their eyes met. "You won't just fly," she said softly. "You'll soar." That night, back at the small but cozy house they had built for Samuel Duncan House, the plaque outside still read, a nod to the man who had refused to let poverty define them. The family gathered for a simple meal. Samuel watched his daughters laugh and plan and dream. He listened to their talk of scholarships, expansions, and future projects, and he realized that the true legacy he had built was not in wood or wages or even wings. It was in them, in their courage, their compassion, and their unyielding belief that love, when given freely and fiercely, could lift entire communities off the ground. As the stars blinked to life overhead, Samuel Carter closed his eyes and whispered a prayer of thanks for promises kept, for dreams realized, and for a future bright enough to light the whole sky. The years rolled on, each bringing new triumphs and quiet reflections for the Carters. The Christiana Memorial School and Health Center flourished, and Samuel Carter, now in his late 60s, took comfort in the steady rhythm of purpose that filled his days. Yet life, with its unpredictable currents, had one more test to offer. It came in the form of a knock at the Artisan Gallery where Samuel worked, now a respected consultant designing custom furniture for luxury hotels. Standing awkwardly in the doorway was Nadine Foster, the woman who had once nearly shattered the fragile family he had fought so hard to protect. Time had not been kind to Nadine. Her once carefully styled hair was streaked with grey, her clothes threadbare, her face lined not just by age, but by hardship. Her second marriage had crumbled, she explained haltingly, her savings squandered by a husband who had gambled away their future. "I heard you might be hiring," she said, unable to meet Samuel's steady gaze. The room fell into a heavy silence. Samuel's mind raced with memories, the welts on Sophia's arms, the cruel words that had driven fear into his daughter's young hearts. He felt the old anger stir, raw and hot, yet something else rose alongside it, something he had learned through years of laboring with love. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is choosing to release the weight that chains the heart. Samuel gestured toward a bench and poured 2 cups of tea. Over the steaming mugs, Nadine confessed her bitterness, her regret, her loneliness. Tears filled her eyes as she spoke of the darkness she had carried for so long, the wrongs she could never undo. Samuel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he nodded slowly. "You can't undo the past," he said. "Neither can I. But we can choose what we build from here." He offered her a small consulting contract, enough to give her dignity, but structured so that she reported to the HR department, not to him directly. It was a boundary born not of resentment, but of wisdom. That evening, Samuel gathered Sophia and Isabella at Duncan House and told them what had happened. Sophia clenched her jaw, old hurts flashing in her eyes. Isabella exhaled sharply, her hands curling into fists. "She doesn't deserve it," Isabella said, her voice tight. Samuel nodded. "Maybe not. Forgiveness isn't about who deserves it. It's about who needs it, and sometimes about who needs to let it go." They sat in silence. The only sound, the soft ticking of the wall clock Samuel had built years ago from scrap wood and hope. After a long pause, Sophia spoke. "Psalm 23, she whispered, recalling the scripture their father had recited to them so often during the hardest nights. "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Forgiveness, they realized, was not weakness. It was strength, the kind that rebuilt bridges instead of burning them. Word of Samuel's gesture spread quietly through the community. Some praised him as a saint, others called him naive. Samuel paid little attention to either camp. He had not acted for approval. He had acted because he refused to let old wounds dictate the future. At Artisan Gallery, Nadine performed her duties competently and respectfully. She never crossed the boundaries Samuel had set, and she never forgot the grace she had been offered. Meanwhile, Sophia's career soared. She officially logged her first international flight as co-pilot, sending Samuel a postcard from Paris with the words, "Papa, we made it." Isabella, now leading a team at Aerotech, secured a research grant to develop eco-friendly materials for aviation. Every milestone, every step forward, was a testament to the foundation Samuel had laid, a foundation built not just on sacrifice and love, but on forgiveness. One Sunday afternoon, as the family gathered on the balcony of Duncan House to watch the sunset, Isabella asked a question that had been weighing on her heart. Papa, she said, do you ever regret it? All of it, everything you gave up? Samuel didn't answer immediately. He watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. I didn't give anything up, he said finally. I traded it. I traded wooden wages for something that lasts longer than any building I could have crafted. He turned to them, his eyes clear. I built you. Tears welled in Sophia's and Isabella's eyes as they leaned into their father's embrace. The three of them, a tapestry of scars and triumphs, woven together by a love that had been tested but never broken. In the quiet that followed, Samuel thought again of Eleanor, of her laughter, her dreams, her unspoken faith that he would find a way to raise their daughters well. You were right, my love, he whispered into the cooling evening air. They flew higher than we ever dared to dream. And in that moment, with the stars blinking awake above them, Samuel Carter understood that true strength was not measured by the battles we win, but by the love we refuse to let die even in the face of betrayal, even in the shadow of sorrow. Forgiveness had not erased the past. It had redeemed it. Years slipped by like the gentle turning of pages in a well-loved book. The Christiana Memorial School and Health Center thrived, becoming a beacon of hope for countless families in the region. Samuel Carter, now silver-haired but still strong in spirit, moved through these days with a quiet satisfaction, watching the seeds he once planted blossom beyond anything he could have imagined. Sophia rose swiftly through the ranks at Skyway Airlines, earning her captain's wings earlier than most of her peers. With every takeoff and landing, she carried not just passengers, but the invisible weight of promises kept, dreams fulfilled, and sacrifices honored. Each time her plane touched down safely, she whispered a simple prayer. Thank you, Papa. Isabella, too, carved her place in the world, leading a research team at Aerotech. Under her leadership, they developed lightweight composite materials that reduced fuel consumption by 15%, a breakthrough that revolutionized aspects of aviation engineering. Her name appeared on patents and academic journals, but whenever reporters asked about her success, she would smile and say, "It all started with birdhouses and a man who taught me how to believe." Together, the sisters expanded Christiana's Promise Foundation, sponsoring dozens of girls across the country to pursue STEM careers. Scholarships, mentorship programs, and summer workshops flourished under their guidance, transforming individual lives and entire communities. But their greatest pride remained the Christiana Memorial School and Health Center back home. On the 20th anniversary of its founding, dignitaries, alumni, and families gathered to celebrate a new expansion, additional classrooms, a science lab, and a maternity wing. Samuel walked slowly but proudly that day, using a handcrafted cane designed by Isabella's team, sturdy yet elegant, much like the man himself. The choir sang songs of gratitude, and the air buzzed with the laughter of children chasing each other across the schoolyard. During the ceremony, a young girl named Aminath, same girl, who had once tugged at Sophia's sleeve and declared her dream of becoming a pilot, stood to speak. "Because of Captain Sophia and Engineer Isabella," she said, voice quivering with emotion, "I know I can aim higher than the clouds. I know dreams don't have limits." When she finished, the crowd erupted into applause. Samuel, sitting in the front row with tears glistening in his eyes, felt the full weight of what his life's work had achieved. After the speeches, Sophia and Isabella led him to a special unveiling. Draped in velvet, a bronze statue stood waiting near the school's entrance. When the cloth was pulled away, Samuel gasped. The statue depicted a man simple, strong lifting two small girls toward the sky. The plaque at its base read, in honor of Samuel Carter, who taught us that love, sacrifice, and faith can build wings strong enough to touch the stars. Samuel rested a trembling hand against the cool metal, overwhelmed. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. Sophia smiled through her tears. "You deserve this and more, Papa." That evening, they gathered at Duncan House, now expanded with a small library and a sunroom overlooking the distant city lights. Over bowls of homemade stew and slices of fresh mango pie, Elena's favorite, they shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. Later, sitting alone on the balcony under a canopy of stars, Samuel whispered a prayer to the heavens. "Eleanor, our girls flew higher than we ever dreamed." In the darkness, he imagined her smiling back, the same smile that had once lit their humble home with hope. The family had learned that true legacy isn't measured by wealth or fame, but by the lives touched, the futures secured, and the kindness rippling outward in endless waves. The next morning, Sophia announced a new projector partnership with Skyway Airlines to create aviation training programs in underserved communities. Isabella spoke of launching a new scholarship fund specifically for young engineers. Samuel simply nodded, his heart full. He no longer needed to carve birdhouses or bookshelves to leave his mark. His legacy lived in every student who walked through the gates of Christiana Memorial, every girl who dared to dream of flight, every mother who found care at the clinic, every child who opened a science book and believed their future could stretch beyond the horizon. In every way that mattered, Samuel Carter had built something enduring, a legacy of love stronger than sorrow, louder than doubt, wider than the sky itself. As the sun rose higher, bathing the world in golden light, Samuel closed his eyes and breathed deeply. His life's work was complete, and somewhere far above, a jet streaked across the sky, tracing a bright, unbreakable line between sacrifice and triumph, between the ground where Samuel had once struggled and the heavens his daughters now called home. Love had taken flight, and it would never land. The 20th anniversary celebration of the Christiana Memorial School and Health Center marked not just the passage of time, but the blossoming of a dream that had once seemed impossibly fragile. That day, the sun rose over the town with a gentle warmth, and crowds gathered early, their faces alight with anticipation. Samuel Carter, now 70 years old, moved slowly but proudly through the crowd, his handcrafted cane steadying each step. His hair was a crown of silver, his face lined with the map of every hardship and triumph he had weathered. Children, many of whom were the daughters and sons of former students, sang hymns of gratitude. The new wing of the school, funded by Sophia and Isabella's foundation, stood gleaming in the morning light. Banners stretched across the entrance, proclaiming, "Celebrating a legacy of love and flight." During the ceremony, dignitaries from across the region praised the Carters' contributions. Sophia spoke of the power of dreams nurtured by sacrifice. Isabella talked about the importance of building bridges for those who followed. Samuel, when it came time for his speech, kept it simple. "Love," he said, his voice steady, "is the only investment that never depreciates. Thank you for proving it." The crowd erupted into applause, but Samuel's heart was captured not by the accolades, but by the small Momensa child clinging to a new book, a mother smiling through tears as she toured the new maternity clinic, a teacher wiping chalk from her hands with pride. Later that afternoon, a special song titled "A Father's Promise" debuted, written by Sophia during a transatlantic layover. The lyrics spoke of building dreams with tired hands, of whispered promises under starlit skies, of a love that neither time nor hardship could erode. As the final notes faded into the warm breeze, a small girl named Aminath, same girl, who had once declared her dream to be a pilot, approached Samuel with bright eyes and trembling hands. "Sir," she said, tugging gently at his sleeve, "I want to become an aerospace engineer and fly alongside Captain Sophia one day." Samuel knelt slowly, despite the protest of aging knees. He took her hand in both of his, calloused but gentle. "Aim higher than the clouds, my child," he said, his voice a soft thunder. A photographer captured the moment, the old man and the young dreamer, generations tied together by invisible threads of hope. The photo would later grace the covers of magazines around the world under the simple but powerful caption, "Faith in Flight." That evening, a private celebration filled Duncan House. Librarians, nurses, pilots, engineers, apprentices, and even a few former skeptics who had once doubted Samuel's choices gathered under strings of soft lights. Samuel sat at the head of the long table, listening to the hum of conversations, the clink of glasses, the peals of laughter. He looked at his daughters, radiant with joy and purpose, and at the community that had grown stronger because two little girls once dared to believe they could fly. Before dessert, Sophia and Isabella stood and asked for the room's attention. "We have one more surprise," Sophia said, her voice trembling with emotion. They dimmed the lights, and a documentary trailer flickered to life on a portable projector. It was a sweeping montage sawdust swirling in a carpentry shop, library floors scrubbed clean under dim lights, birdhouses lined up at Sunday markets, a battered biscuit tin labeled Sky Fund, the proud moment of graduation, and the soaring flight of dreams realized. The film ended with Samuel's words, recorded without his knowing during a quiet evening on the balcony. "Every child is a runway. Clear the debris, and they will take off." The room erupted into standing ovations, cheers, and tears. Later, after the guests had left and the house had grown quiet again, Samuel sat on the balcony, gazing up at the stars, those same ancient lights he had once watched from a leaking roof with dreams too big for his tiny world. He thought of Elenata laughter, the promises, the unwavering belief that love would be enough. He thought of Sophia and Isabella not just as daughters, but as forces of change, proof that even the smallest acts of faith could set generations into motion. A jet streaked across the night sky, its red beacon tracing a bright, determined arc overhead. Samuel smiled, tears wetting his cheeks. Love had outgrown him. It had taken flight, higher and farther than he could have carried it alone. It lived now in classrooms and clinics, in scholarships and dreams, in every life touched by the quiet, stubborn, enduring faith of a carpenter who once refused to let go. He leaned back, feeling the cool evening air fill his lungs. His vow had not merely survived, it had become immortal. Sometimes the most beautiful legacies are built not with grand gestures, but with quiet faith and steady hands. Samuel Carter's story is a gentle reminder that love, given freely and patiently, has the power to outlast hardship, sorrow, and even time itself. His life teaches us that true success isn't measured by wealth or fame, but by the lives we touch along the way. Every bedtime story, every word of encouragement, every small sacrifice made for someone else's tomorrow, these are the invisible threads that weave the strongest legacies. Forgiveness softens even the deepest wounds, and resilience born of quiet hope becomes the bridge to a better future. In our later years, when we look back, it won't be the things we owned that define us, but the love we gave and the dreams we helped others believe in. Samuel's journey reminds us, even if we move slowly now, our love can still move mountains. And every act of kindness, no matter how small, plants seeds that will bloom long after we are gone.